For some reason, I couldn't think about Reagan without thinking about his predecessor, Jimmy Carter, who was his opposite in almost every way. Mild mannered, God fearing, peanut farmer, family man. Let's talk about Carter and his record on civil rights. And remember, this is a man from Georgia, the state that did not and was not originally supposed to be a slave state. But they wanted to be like South Carolina and insisted on slavery. No, I can't seem to let that go. But then I'm biased because my grandfather was born in Georgia. So I have a wee bit of animosity. So there's that. But I digress. Carter was born in Plains, Georgia, and grew up in segregated Archery, Georgia, and attended segregated public schools. This was Georgia. In 1962, he entered state politics and served as senator from 1963 to 1967. He served as governor in 1971 until 1975. And Carter would become president in 1977 and lose to Ronald Reagan in 1981. He literally just passed away December 2024 and was the longest lived president in United States history and the first to reach the age of 100. Now, though his father was a segregationist, again, this was Georgia. His mother, Lillian, passed on to Carter more progressive views about race relations. Carter had grown up with black playmates in the tiny community of Archery, Georgia, and had been teased in his all white elementary school for sounding black. Now, Carter earned a Bachelor of Science degree from the U.S. Naval Academy in 1946, and he joined the submarine service before returning home to tend to the family peanut farm. When a ship on which Carter was serving visited the Bahamas, Carter joined a boycott of a social event at the British Embassy because black sailors were specifically not invited. On a trip back to Plains, Georgia, he told his father about this episode, and his father told him that he was wrong. Yeah. He said the embassy was perfectly within its rights to choose its guests. He began his public service career by serving on local library, hospital, and school boards, where he quietly accommodated segregationist policies. However, local residents remembered that he objected to his Baptist church's refusal to allow blacks to attend services, and that he was the only prominent local leader to refuse membership in the racist white citizens councils. They were the organization that sprung up after the verdict in Brown versus the Board of Education. Their purpose was to keep schools segregated. Yeah. When his neighbors came to the peanut warehouse and offered to pay Carter's $5 dues to the councils, they thought he didn't have enough money. Carter told them that he would rather flush their $5 down the toilet than become a member of the organization. He joined community organizations and became a member of the local school board. He was on the board in the aftermath of the Brown decision, and Carter did not necessarily advocate for desegregation. he chose to fight for the civil rights of blacks quietly, very quietly. Now, though he was quiet about his advocacy for blacks, it did not go unnoticed. No. Carter, at an event sponsored by the LBJ Presidential Library on the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act, remembered a time when he drove to the only gas station in Plains and was refused service because he was a lover of black people. They actually used a different term that I won't use here. No. Prior to Carter becoming a state senator, he served as chairman of the Sumter County School Board, where he took the unpopular stance of supporting the desegregation of public schools. Jonathan Alter, in his 2020 biography, His Very Best, Jimmy Carter, A Life, noted that Carter, as a school board member, had made a number of moves to accommodate or uphold the local segregationist system of the 1950s. At one point, trying to shift resources from black schools to white schools in the name of sound fiscal management. Carter kept going back and forth in his support. One moment he would support desegregationists, and the next moment he would support segregationists. You see, Carter favored racial tolerance and integration, but often kept those feelings to himself to avoid making enemies and alienating segregationist colleagues. By 1961, Carter began to speak more prominently of integration. However, historians say that Carter, early in his career, was both a creature and a critic of the strict segregationist system he had been born into. He largely kept his head down as civil rights advocates fought and sacrificed to change the status quo, with serious and sometimes dangerous protests and crackdowns flaring up in Sumter County. Later, once he had achieved positions of power, he was outspoken about renouncing racial discrimination, seeking means to redress it, and trying to live up to those principles. In 1965, the Carter family took a stand at their church when the congregation met to consider a resolution prohibiting blacks from attending service. There were no black members of the congregation at the time, but a group of civil rights activists were traveling in the region with a mixed racial group visiting church services. The members of the Plains Baptist Church were afraid that they might be targeted for a visit from the civil rights campaigners and wanted to determine in advance how the congregation would respond. The members of the Carter family were the only ones to vote against the resolution. Carter did not seek out opportunities to stand up against segregation, but when they arose, he did not hide from them. Next time we're together, we'll discuss Carter's record as a senator and governor.